of Clinton officials are reminding that will soon result in your water bills being more expensive.
The other thing I wanted to mention is there's going to be a letter to Clinton residents coming up from the city talking about this rate increase from the Clinton Sanitary District. This is something that, nobody likes the idea of rate increases, and it's not coming from the city of Clinton. Clinton Sanitary District is their own district. They do their own work. So if people don't know, the sewer plant that's outside of town, that is not owned by the city of Clinton. They're their own entity. They have their own employees that maintain it, but they service every single resident within the city of Clinton. So this is where it comes to us. We do the billing for them, and they need a lot of upgrades. I just got off the phone with Mayor Tom Edmonds a little bit ago and talking about this, and he said the last huge upgrade that they had was in February of 1974.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of things that need to be improved, and they've kind of band-aided things along. So they went out for a low-interest loan of not to exceed more than $15 million. So with that, they need to recoup some of that money, and this is where it's going to be passed along to the residents of Clinton, unfortunately. So
that is City Administrator Taylor Baxter, who reminds this is not an initiative of the Clinton Water Department. However, they are the ones that have to end up billing for this increase.
Right now, their minimum rate that they have is $2.86, is what you would see on your bill. That's going to jump up to $15.36. So it's a pretty substantial jump. And John Weiss, our Commissioner of Public Property, brought this up yesterday, that this is not coming from the city of Clinton. We do the billing, but this is the Clinton Sanitary District, and it's a separate entity from us. We just do the billing. So we want to make that clear to everybody.
The upgrades to the sanitation district's facility were a mandate from the EPA and largely unexpected. Therefore, the sanitation district could not save money over time to make sure they did not burden water users with the cost. Once complete, the sanitation operations will run much more efficiently and better filter the city's water. The Clinton Chamber of Commerce is celebrating another successful haunted house season. Despite some poor weather weekends, the annual Terror on Washington Street haunted house had a great turnout once again this year. That's according to Executive Director Janice Peterson, who indicates she was concerned the weather might keep the crowds away, but they came out despite poor weather on some nights.
It is our biggest fundraiser of the year. It is every Friday and Saturday night in the month of October. However, like you mentioned, the convention, we start at the convention in March and then start building the house in May, June, July, somewhere around in there to get it ready for October. So we had a lot of rainy, icky weather, but the crowds didn't disappoint, especially the last night. We had almost 500 people the last night, and it rained horribly. We have an area where you have to crawl, and we closed the crawl just because you've got wet feet, you've got wet clothes, and you don't want to crawl through there after somebody that's been wet has crawled through this. So we did close that part of it, but it's not a huge impact.
Peterson says the haunted house could not have happened without the volunteers of organizations and groups that stepped up to help with it. She reminds the chamber gives those groups a 7% contribution from the night's proceeds.
We have groups, organizations and groups, high school kids, other things that actually do our scares and are our actors inside the house. This year we had the theater group from Clinton High School. We had Game Masters from Clinton High School. We had the Prairie Land Abate motorcycle team. We had the Venturing Crew Boy Scouts, and we had Misfit softball. We asked that they have about 15 people or more. And we ask, this is silly, we ask that they wear all black because we just don't know exactly where we're going to put them. And if you have on a big purple shirt like I do, you're going to stand out in there. So we ask that. And then we kind of give them the rules. They need to stay in character. They need to scare someone, do their scare, and then step back. Don't get in someone's face. They can't, our guests cannot touch our actors. Our actors cannot touch our guests. We reiterate that over and over and over because that is a very important thing, especially for our people going through. They need to know that no one's going to reach out and touch them. We give back 7% of the night's proceeds to the groups, and a lot of them look forward to it because that's a fundraiser for them also. I heard a lot of positive things that the groups had just so much fun, a couple of the newer groups.
Now it's off to planning for next year's haunted house. Peterson says organizers will head to the annual haunted house convention in St. Louis just on the other side of the new year and gather ideas, returning home to plan and start getting ready as soon as next summer. News time is quarter after 7, on this Monday morning. We'll have plenty more to get to coming your way next on the WHOW Morning Show.
Looking for Chevrolet inventory? This is Scott Baum from Baum Chevrolet Buick here in Clinton. We have the all-new Chevrolet Trax, Blazer, and Trailblazers coming. Plus, several Chevrolet Equinoxes and Traverses are here. This month, take advantage of extra $1,000 trade-in assistance on your trade. There's always a need for quality trades here at Baum's. BaumChevyBuick.com. Right from the start.
News time again, quarter after 7 on this Monday. Coverage of news brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters. December weather could include mild and dry conditions. Blame it on El Nino, says DTN Ag meteorologist John Baranick.
Yeah, maybe the first couple of days there of December might stay on this little, chillier path. But, when we look at history of El Ninos in December, and we look at some of the long-range forecast models and some of the other indicators we're watching out in like the Pacific and Indian Oceans, the month of December looks to be quite warm. It's just one of those things that it doesn't matter if it's a weak El Nino, a moderate El Nino, a strong one, a really strong one. It just seems that December is always a really warm month. And it looks like it's going to be in the cards. So, obviously, temperatures are going to fluctuate during the month. It's not going to be all blasted hot, and we're not going to be talking about temperatures in the 80s at all. But, we're looking at above normal temperatures for the month. And the risk for precipitation's lower. That storm track should start really piping up across kind of the Texas through the southeast area and missing us a bit here in Illinois. So we stay drier as well. So if you like a white Christmas and to have the snow around for that, we've got a lower chance for that this year than most years. It doesn't mean it won't happen. We could get one, rogue storm to pop in there right around Christmas time to give us some snow on the ground. But outside of that, the risk of that's pretty low, actually.
Chilly conditions will impact much of Illinois to end November, including the Thanksgiving weekend, but dry weather will be in play, which should aid in holiday travel. Getting set for the winter meeting season, and don't forget about the Everything Local Conference involving the Illinois food, farmers markets, and specialty crops. The event is promoted by the Illinois Specialty Growers Association, the Illinois Farmers Market Association, and the Illinois Farm Bureau.
We are having successes getting some of the things that have been worked on for years, many years prior to when I was part of the organization. And one of the biggest things is the locks and dams. Lock 25 has now started. That's a very big deal because that's one thing that the corn growers has worked on for years and years and years to try to get some attention to those locks. And now that's started. We're going to try very hard to keep that funding going and then also to make sure that the construction progresses to the other locks in the chain. One of our big deals is the Next Gen Fuels Act, and that will help keep ethanol in the forefront of fuels for the next number of years. And the engines that will be developed because of that authorization and acceptance of the higher blend of fuel through EPA, that's part of that bill. That will make sure that the liquid fuels stay as a big part of the transportation industry here in the United States.
The conference is January 17th through the 19th at the Crown Plaza in Springfield. Get more information at specialtygrowers.org. What's 15 foot tall and 23 foot long that weighs nearly 1,000 pounds? It's a cow sculpture, now with a name, and it's outside of the Lake County Farm Bureau office in Grays Lake.
We wanted to involve, not only our members, but the general public to make sure she was noticed, not only in Lake County, but throughout. So we had a naming contest from the day she was brought here. And lo and behold to us, we had just shy of 1,000 submissions for her name, which just, again, blew us away. We expected we'd get, a couple hundred maybe, but they were names that didn't just come from Illinois either. We had folks from Arizona and New York and other parts of the United States that submitted names too. And we wanted to know why. So submit a name and tell us your reason behind it. And we had some pretty interesting names, some funny names. We enjoyed that month of watching them all come in, and they were unique. People put some thought into it, which is what we really wanted. We had several submissions for Gracie, and we ended up going with Gracie Bell. We had a couple submissions for Bell as well, and we just thought she was such a big bovine. She needed to have a big name, and Gracie being graceful and Bell being beautiful, loosely translated, just made sense. And also Grays Lake, her home is Grays Lake. A lot of folks liked the Grays Lake Gracie kind of feel to it. So our board went back and forth on a bunch of different names, and they finally said, Gracie Bell is what it's going to be, and that's what we ended up selecting, and it's been well received. It has been well received. We had cowbells out there yesterday. You can never get enough cowbell. Yesterday, I think we had enough cowbell. But we want to put a big dinner bell out there that people can ring when they come visit her, and just kind of embrace that name as well.
That is Greg Keppen, who serves as the Lake County Farm Bureau Manager. The American Farmland Trust is promoting the fall covers for Spring Savings Program, and the sign-up period begins next month, says Midwest Regional Director Chris Reynolds.
So really excited that the fall covers for Spring Savings Program is going into its 5th year. This program has been very popular, started out 5 years ago with 50,000 acres available in the state. This is a program that pays farmers $5 per acre if they plant cover crops on fields that are being insured through the federal crop insurance program. And it's a very what I believe to be an efficient program. It's also easy to administer and sign up for. The $5 per acre is taken off of the insured's crop insurance invoice at the end of the year, and so it's been very popular throughout the years. This year there'll be 140,000 acres available across the state on a first come first served basis, and the sign up will begin on December 15th. And really, this program started as a way for Illinois to help reach its goals for the nutrient loss reduction strategy. And cover crops were listed as one of the main infield management practices that help reduce nitrogen and phosphorus losses from crop fields. And so we know through a lot of research that's being done across the state that cover crops can have a big impact on not only reducing the amount of sediment being lost and protecting the soil and improving soil health, but ultimately also keeping those nutrients in the field where they can be utilized for the next crop.
Get more information at farmland.org. Food price inflation continues to be abated. Gary Crawford has this report.
Government is out with its Consumer Price Index report tracking inflation and what happened with it during October.
Overall, this was a good report for consumers. Inflation in October was a little bit lower than expectations.
In fact, Agriculture Department economist Megan Schweitzer says for all goods and services averaged together,
prices stayed flat. So the overall rate of inflation was unchanged from September to October. And prices for all items were 3.2% higher than in October of last year.
So during October, zero inflation when you average in all goods and services in the general economy. But looking at just food prices, Megan says those did inch up last month, but not by very much.
The food prices increased by 0.3% in October and were 3.3% higher than this time last year. And food at home prices, the grocery prices, also rose by 0.3% in October. And food at home prices were 2.1% higher than this time last year.
2.1%. That 2.1% is less than expected, less than the 20-year historical average, which is
2.5%.
So food price inflation cooling down quite a bit. A look at a few food categories now. First, when COVID hit and when the war in Ukraine started, wheat prices around the world shot up by a huge amount, which later took retail cereal and bakery product prices up with them. Prices last year averaged 13% higher. Some of the monthly increases were much higher than that. And prices this year have increased every month. But now, the good news.
There was no change in the prices of cereals and bakery products in October, and prices in that category seem to be stabilizing over the past 6 months. Prices for cereals and bakery products are up 4.2% from last October, with most of that growth coming at the end of last year and early this year.
More decent news on the food front. Schweitzer says several major food groups are currently selling for less than October a year ago. Products including
eggs,
down 22%.
Fresh vegetables,
down about 2%.
Fish and seafood,
down about 1%.
And dairy products.
Those costing about 0.5% less than this time last year. So the bottom line is we did not see big price hikes for most food commodities.
But what we did see was stronger price growth for meats this month. Beef, pork, and other meats all grew by at least 1%.
And beef prices are leading the way.
They rose by 1% in October, and beef prices have increased every month so far in 2023. And beef prices are now 8.9% higher than they were a year ago. And that's the largest increase across all of the food categories that we track.
Due to drought and other issues, the nation's beef cattle herds getting smaller, sending cattle prices to near record high levels, with retail beef prices following suit. But again, in general, Megan says food price inflation is cooling down to pre-COVID levels, and next year may only be about 2%. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
What are the highlights of the USDA's annual look at population and economic trends in rural America? Rod Bain has this report.
A positive trend in rural population growth of late.
The rural population has continued to grow since 2020. The Census Bureau data shows the rural growth of 0.25% from July 2020 through June of 2022.
USDA economic researcher Jim Davis, among the authors of the 2023 edition of the Rural America at a Glance report.
The Rural America at a Glance is an annual report, and it usually covers an annual summary of demographic and economic trends with additional topics that highlight current opportunities and challenges that are facing rural America.
So among the topics of focus within the annual report,
population, often poverty and employment, but then focuses and takes a dive into a particular topic of interest. This year's report is focusing on population and migration trends, poverty, housing insecurity, employment, and clean energy jobs.
The finding of a slight uptick in rural population growth of late is significant, according to Davis, as
this continues an important turnaround in population growth from the decade of 2010 to 2020, where annual growth rates were either negative or near zero.
As for the why behind the rise in rural population as a whole,
we found rural growth was due primarily to net domestic migration from urban to rural areas.
In terms of rural population changes versus urban population during the time period,
urban areas, there was domestic net out-migration on net. However, urban areas also continued to grow due to international net migration into cities.
And regarding rural population change by region,
net domestic migration was strongest into rural areas that are in the upper west and also in the south, and that we still have some net domestic outmigration from the Midwest and the Corn Belt.
In total, Davis cites 5 main takeaways from this year's Rural America at a Glance report. In addition to the trend of increased rural population growth,
we also find that rural poverty has been modestly declining. A third, we find that housing insecurity continues to be a persistent issue, particularly for low-income households. Fourth, we would find that rural employment has essentially recovered from the COVID-19 pandemic. And then finally, we look at rural clean energy jobs and find that 1% of jobs in rural America are in industries such as solar and biofuels.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
News time, 29 minutes after 7 o'clock. Coverage of news brought to you by Baum Chevrolet Buick in Clinton, your Silverado headquarters, and the morning show streams to Facebook and YouTube, brought to you by Peterson Insurance, your Pekin Insurance agents in Clinton. We come up on 7:30 on this